Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Charles, and I'm presenter one for Chapter 9, Leadership, and we'll be covering topics from what is leadership to various leadership styles. So, some quick objectives before we start. By the ending of this, we should be able to define leadership, distinguish between various leadership perspectives, and lastly, identify and understand the three basic leadership styles. Defining leadership. So leadership is defined as a behavior and or communication that influences, guides, or controls the group. It's often seen as a counteractive influence to any group confusion or disorganization, as well as for when groups just get off track. The role of a leader is to establish those conditions that are necessary for making the best possible choices, as well as maximizing their group's efficiency. So what is it exactly that makes a great leader? So in the next couple of slides, we'll be covering various leadership perspectives that can give us some insight on that. The trait perspective, also known as the trait theory, is an early assumption that leaders possess certain qualities and traits that are just better suited for leadership. The theory basically identifies common character attributes that are found in leaders. These are things like dominance, extroversion, social participation, and intelligence. Research finds that leaders are often larger in size as well as better looking. Although, like many theories, there are some limitations. So these are traits that are useful in some situations, aren't useful in other situations. The theory fails to identify traits that are important to becoming a leader, as well as those that are critical in maintaining leadership positions. It does not distinguish between leaders and followers with similar traits. And lastly, it's not useful for those group members who are trying to improve their leadership skills. The functional perspective. So the functional perspective views leadership as behaviors that may be performed by any group member in order to maximize their group's effectiveness. It defines specific behaviors that are linked to leadership and then splits those key leadership behaviors into two categories. 1, task leadership, and 2, process leadership. So task leadership. This category of the functional perspective aims to accomplish the group's goal. And this is often done through communicative behaviors. So behaviors like initiating and proposing change are great ways for group members to kind of step back, reevaluate their problem or situation, and generate new solutions to their problem. Coordinating. So coordinating is a great way for group members to kind of build on each other's ideas. Summarizing is a great way for the group to stay on track, as well as keeping in mind what are the key points or main topics of the discussion. It helps bring clarity and also helps remove a little bit of uncertainty that group members might feel towards their group. And lastly, elaborating. So elaborating is a great way for those group members whose ideas have maybe been pushed to the side during the main discussion to kind of bring it up again and elaborate or expand on their idea. Process leadership. So this category of the functional perspective aims to maintain the satisfactory interpersonal climate that's found within the group. So this is just the general feel of the group. Are we working well together, or are we bickering amongst ourselves? So in times when you feel that tensions are high, there are behaviors that can help enhance that climate. So those are things like releasing tension, which is like taking a break, grabbing some coffee, and retackling the problem with a fresh mindset. Gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is a great way for everyone to be heard. It's actually found that members who stay quiet in the group have a negative effect on the group overall. And encouraging. Encouraging is a great way to praise people for their good work. It makes them feel better about themselves as well as the group itself. And lastly, mediating. So mediating comes when conflict becomes person-oriented rather than issue-oriented. And it takes the leader to then kind of mediate the situation. The situational perspective. So the situational perspective takes a look at the interaction that are surrounding group needs, goals, leadership style, and the situation itself. It's basically just adapting your leadership style to the context of the situation, which I think is a great perspective because it accommodates factors such as leadership behaviors, task needs, process needs, your leadership style, and the overall situation. So the image that I've actually put with this is pretty on point because it is talking about focusing on the task as well as focusing on your relations and how you can kind of keep a fine line in between those while you're working with your group. such as being able to delegate, consult, convince, and instruct people while maintaining focus on the task as well as the relations in the group. Alright, next up are 3 basic leadership styles, which are the behavior patterns that will reflect the leader's attitudes and or beliefs. Authoritarian. So authoritarian leaders will assume positions of behavioral and intellectual superiority. They will often provide clear expectations, make the group decisions, give orders, and virtually control all the group activities. And research has found that group members who have authoritarian leaders were actually more productive and more engaged, although they found that this was only occurring while the leader was present. Democratic. So democratic leaders will offer guidance, believe in, and work with the group, and those major group decisions will often involve the entire group. So research has found that groups were more satisfied and functioned with more order and positivity underneath guidance of democratic leaders. Laissez-faire. So these are also known as delegative leaders who will participate least and assume that the group will then direct itself. They often avoid dominating the group and is, to what I feel, the least effective form of leadership. Alright, so looking back at our basic 3 leadership styles, it's important to keep in mind that not one leadership style is effective in all situations. And in fact, recent research has found that effective leadership is actually contingent on irrelated factors such as culture, time constraint, group compatibility, and the nature of the group task. And to kind of close it out, we'll summarize everything that we've just learned. So leaders create environments that will optimize group efficiency. And we've seen that the trait perspective, although interesting through a historical lens, is very limited and not very useful. The functional perspective, made up of 2 parts, task and process leadership, shows us that leadership behaviors can be conducted by any member of the group. And lastly, the situational perspective illustrates how great leaders should be able to adapt their leadership style, whether it be democratic, authoritarian, or laissez-faire, to the situation itself. And always, always, always remember to keep in mind that not one style is suited for every situation. Alright, thanks guys. Stay tuned for presenter number 2.